When Miguel stood up at his engagement party and announced he was changing his last name back to his biological father's name because I wasn't really family, I made my decision and quietly walked to my truck to call my lawyer. By 6 a.m. the next morning, I had already filed repossession orders for all 3 food trucks that were still registered in my name as collateral. And that was just the beginning. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The mariachi band was playing softly in the corner of the restaurant's private dining room, and Carmen squeezed my hand under the table as Miguel raised his beer bottle for another toast. The warm scent of carnitas mixed with the sound of laughter echoing off the terracotta walls. The whole family was there, Carmen's sisters, Miguel's cousins, even old Mrs. Esperanza from next door who had watched Miguel grow up, her weathered hands clutching a glass of horchata. The kid looked handsome in his pressed white shirt, Sophia glowing beside him in her yellow dress that caught the amber light from the hanging lanterns. "Vinny," Miguel called out, his voice warm with what I thought was genuine affection. "Stand up, man. I want to say something." I pushed back from the table, the metal chair scraping against the tile floor, Carmen beaming up at me with those dark eyes that had watched me raise this boy for 22 years. The room fell into expectant silence, even the mariachi players pausing between songs. 22 years of raising this boy, and here he was, about to get married to a sweet girl who made him happy. At least, that's what I believed as I stood there, my calloused hands resting on the white tablecloth. The food truck business we'd built together was thriving. 3 trucks now, hitting different routes across San Antonio like a well-oiled machine. Miguel had always been good with people, charming the customers with that easy smile while I handled the mechanical side and Carmen managed the books with her meticulous attention to detail. "You know," Miguel continued, his arm around Sophia's waist, "when I was 7 years old and scared of everything, this man right here taught me how to change oil in his garage. The smell of motor oil was like cologne to him." Laughter rippled through the room. I felt that familiar warmth spreading through my chest. The same feeling I'd had when he graduated high school, when he got his food handler's license, when he'd come to me with the idea for expanding to a second truck, his eyes bright with dreams. "The Rodriguez food empire," I joked back then, not knowing those words would come back to haunt me. "Sophia's been helping me think about the future," Miguel said, and I noticed how she smiled up at him, her manicured hand resting on his chest like she owned him. "About expanding, maybe opening a real restaurant someday. And Vinny, I know you're always worried about us moving too fast, but we've got big dreams." I nodded, already mentally calculating what another loan might cost, what permits we'd need, how many more sleepless nights I'd spend worrying about cash flow. At 61, I should have been thinking about retirement, about fishing trips and lazy Sundays. But watching Miguel succeed made every sacrifice feel worth it. The $95,000 from selling my childhood home, my mother's house where I'd learned to work with my hands, had been the foundation for everything we'd built. Carmen leaned over and whispered, "You did good with him, mi amor," her breath warm against my ear. But then something shifted in the room's atmosphere. Miguel's expression changed, like a cloud passing over the sun, and he cleared his throat with the deliberate sound of someone preparing to drop a bomb. "Actually, there's something else I need to announce tonight." His voice carried differently now, more formal, like he was reading from a script someone else had written. The room fell into a different kind of quiet, the kind that comes before bad news. Sophia's smile seemed frozen now, plastic and rehearsed, and I noticed she wasn't quite meeting my eyes anymore. Her gaze kept darting toward the far end of the table. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about family, about legacy, about who I really am." Each word hit the air like stones dropping into still water. "And I've decided it's time to honor my real heritage." The mariachi music seemed to fade into background noise, drowned out by the rushing sound in my ears. Carmen's hand found mine again, but this time her grip was tight, worried, like she could sense what was coming. "My biological father, Eduardo Morales, is here tonight." Miguel gestured toward a man I hadn't noticed before, sitting at the far end of the table like a spider in a web. Thin face, weathered but well-dressed, expensive watch catching the light. "He's back in San Antonio now, and we've been talking about what it means to be a Morales." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I could hear Mrs. Esperanza's sharp intake of breath, the scrape of someone's chair as they shifted uncomfortably. So I'm changing my name back to Miguel Morales. It's time to embrace my true family. He looked directly at me now, his eyes harder than I'd ever seen them, like looking at a stranger wearing my son's face. Vincent, you've been Carmen's husband. You've helped out financially, and I appreciate that. But you're not really family, since you're not my real dad. The words hit like a wrench to the solar plexus, knocking the breath from my lungs. 22 years of school plays where I cheered until my voice was hoarse. Soccer games where I paced the sidelines, teaching him to drive in empty parking lots, staying up all night when he had pneumonia and I thought I might lose him. All of it reduced to Carmen's husband, who had helped out financially. The business needs to keep growing, Miguel continued, each word carefully chosen, rehearsed, and I'll still need your financial support. But going forward, family decisions will be made by family. Real family. The room was silent except for the mariachi band, who seemed oblivious to the emotional carnage happening at our table. Carmen's sisters stared at their plates like they contained the secrets of the universe. Mrs. Esperanza's mouth hung open, her horchata forgotten. Sophia looked anywhere but at me, suddenly fascinated by the patterns in the ceiling tiles. I looked at Miguel, really looked at him, and saw my mother's $95,000, saw the 3 trucks I'd bought and maintained, saw the permits I'd secured and the insurance I'd paid. But more than that, I saw every bedtime story, every scraped knee I'd bandaged, every proud moment I'd treasured. All of it now labeled as helping out financially. I stood up slowly, my legs steadier than they had any right to be, and placed my napkin on the table with the precision of a man who worked with his hands. Congratulations on your engagement, I said quietly, my voice betraying nothing of the hurricane inside my chest. Carmen, I'll be in the truck. I walked out without another word, leaving my untouched plate of carnitas growing cold on the table, the grease congealing like my hopes for this family. But here's what Miguel didn't know. What none of them knew as they sat in that awkward silence. I wasn't going to my truck to cry or rage or punch something. I was going to start counting. In the parking lot, I sat in my truck and stared at the restaurant sign flickering in neon pink. Miguel's Tacos, it read, though the M kept buzzing on and off like a dying heartbeat. I remembered when we'd scraped together the money for that first truck, how excited he'd been to paint his name on the side. Miguel Rodriguez Mobile Kitchen, it had said then, before someone convinced him that Rodriguez wasn't good enough anymore. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to my lawyer's number, my thumb hovering over the contact like a gun waiting to fire. Marcus had handled the business incorporation, the truck registrations, all the paperwork that Miguel had been too busy to deal with. Let the old man handle the boring stuff, he'd always said with a laugh that I'd found endearing then. Now I understood what he really meant. Marcus? It's Vinny Rodriguez. I need you to pull all the paperwork on the food truck business. Every contract, every registration, every loan document. I'll be at your office at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Everything okay, Vinny? Marcus's voice carried the concern of a friend, not just a lawyer. Just had some family business come up. I need to know exactly where I stand legally. And that's when it hit me, the moment when something mechanical clicked into place in my brain, like a transmission finally finding the right gear. I wasn't angry. Anger was hot and unpredictable. What I felt was cold, precise, methodical. I felt like a mechanic who just diagnosed the problem and was ready to fix it permanently. As I hung up, Carmen emerged from the restaurant, her purse clutched tight against her chest like armor. Her eyes were red, but her jaw was set in that determined line I'd fallen in love with 37 years ago. She walked with purpose, like a woman who'd made a decision. "Take me home," she said simply, sliding into the passenger seat. The leather creaked under her weight, a sound I'd heard thousands of times but never noticed until tonight. We drove in silence for 10 minutes, the city lights blurring past like memories I was trying to forget. The radio played quietly, some old Vicente Fernandez song about betrayal and lost love that felt too appropriate to be coincidence. Finally, Carmen spoke, her voice steady as steel. 37 years we've been married. 22 years I watched you raise that boy like he was your own blood. Better than your own blood. Because you chose him every single day. Her words hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire that was just beginning to burn. He made his choice, I said, keeping my eyes on the road, my hands steady on the wheel. No, Mijo. That girl made the choice for him. I saw her whispering in his ear all night, saw the way she looked at Eduardo's watch, his clothes. She thinks she's trading up. Carmen's voice carried the bitter wisdom of a woman who'd watched people's true colors emerge under pressure. I thought about the ledger at home, locked in my desk drawer like a loaded gun. Every loan documented in Carmen's careful handwriting. Every payment recorded with dates and amounts. Carmen had always been meticulous with the books, treating the business money like it was sacred. Because it was the last piece of my mother's legacy. The house where she'd taught me that a man's word was his bond and his family was his treasure. But apparently, I'd been wrong about who my family really was. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Carmen pretended to sleep beside me. The central air hummed steadily, but I couldn't get warm. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Miguel's voice saying, "You're not really family," and saw Eduardo's smug face at the end of that table. 3 years, 4 months, and 16 days since we'd registered the first truck. I could calculate it exactly because I'd marked every milestone in my calendar like a proud father documenting his son's achievements. Now those achievements felt like evidence in a case I was building. Let me break down exactly what Miguel Morales, because that's what he wanted to be called now, owed me. $23,000 for the initial truck and commercial kitchen equipment. $18,500 for permits, licenses, and first year's insurance that took me 3 weeks to navigate. $12,000 for the second truck that he begged me to co-sign for. $19,000 for kitchen equipment upgrades when he decided the original setup wasn't professional enough. $8,500 for the third truck's down payment when his Rodriguez food empire dreams got bigger. $14,000 for various repairs and improvements, most of which I did myself to save money. Plus monthly support averaging $1,200 for 39 months when cash flow got tight and Miguel needed help making payroll. The number came to $95,000 exactly, every penny from my mother's house, plus interest from my own pocket. Money I'd planned to use for Carmen's and my retirement, maybe a little travel, definitely some peace of mind. Instead, I'd invested it in a boy who just told me I wasn't family. At 4 a.m., I gave up on sleep and went to my garage. The smell of motor oil and metal shavings had always been my church, the place where I could think clearly under the harsh fluorescent lights. I pulled out the filing cabinet where I kept all the business documents and spread them across my workbench like a general planning a campaign. Every truck registration listed me as primary owner, with Miguel as an authorized operator. Every loan had my name as guarantor. Every insurance policy showed Rodriguez Auto Repair as the business address. I was the one the bank called when payments were late. I was the one who signed for the commercial licenses. Miguel had been living in my shadow so long, he'd forgotten I was the one casting it. I thought about the GPS tracking devices I'd installed in all 3 trucks 6 months ago, after Miguel had mentioned some equipment going missing from competitors' vehicles. Just a precaution, I told him. Insurance companies love that stuff. Those little black boxes had been faithfully recording every stop, every route, every deviation from the permitted locations, including the cash-only stops at construction sites and apartment complexes where Miguel had been pocketing money without reporting it to the IRS. Smart kid, except he'd forgotten that his stepdaddy knew a thing or two about documentation. By 6 a.m., I had a complete picture spread across my workbench like an X-ray revealing a fatal disease. Miguel owed approximately $31,000 in unreported income taxes. The trucks had been operating without current health department certifications for 6 weeks, something I'd been nagging him about. And according to the GPS logs, they'd been selling in residential areas that violated their mobile vendor permits on 67 different occasions. 67 times Miguel had broken the law while driving trucks registered in my name. Carmen found me at my workbench at sunrise, documents sorted into neat stacks like evidence for a trial. She was wearing her old terry cloth robe, the one she'd had since before Miguel came into our lives. Her hair still mussed from a sleepless night. "What are you doing, mi amor?" she asked, though I could tell from her tone she already knew. "Counting," I said simply, my voice steady as a metronome. "Turns out I'm really good at math when I need to be." She looked at the papers spread across the workbench: registration documents, loan agreements, GPS printouts, tax records. 22 years of fatherhood reduced to a paper trail. "How bad is it?" she asked. "Depends on your perspective," I said, not looking up from the documents. "From Miguel's perspective, it's about to get very bad. From my perspective, it's about to get very satisfying." At 7 a.m. sharp, I sat across from Marcus in his downtown office. 3 manila folders between us like ammunition for a war. I was finally ready to fight. Marcus was a thin man in his 50s who'd been handling small business law since before Miguel was born, and he had the kind of sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Jesus, Vinny, he really said that? In front of everyone?" Marcus asked after I'd given him the abbreviated version of last night's festivities. "Family decisions will be made by real family." I repeated the words exactly as Miguel had said them, letting them hang in the air like a noose. "But he still wants my financial support." Marcus opened the first folder and whistled low, the sound sharp in the quiet office. "Well, the good news is you own everything. Trucks, equipment, business licenses. It's all in your name or your business name. Miguel's been operating under your permits like a teenager driving daddy's car." "What about the bad news?" I asked, though I was pretty sure there wasn't any. "The bad news is if you pull the plug, you'll destroy his livelihood completely. You sure you want to do this? Kid made a mistake. But, Marcus, let me explain something," I said, leaning forward in my chair. "I didn't raise Miguel for 22 years so he could throw it back in my face when it became convenient. I raised him because that's what a father does. A real father." I emphasized those last 2 words like Miguel had, letting Marcus hear the venom. The second folder contained the GPS data, printed out in neat columns showing dates, times, and locations. Marcus studied the reports with increasing concern, his eyebrows climbing higher with each page. "He's been operating outside his permitted zones regularly. And these construction sites, if he's taking cash payments without reporting them, that's what the third folder is for." The financial records Carmen had meticulously maintained showed a clear pattern that any accountant would recognize. Reported income significantly lower than what the business should have been generating based on supply purchases and location traffic. Basic math that Miguel apparently thought no one would check. "This could trigger a full audit," Marcus warned, but I could see the lawyer in him already calculating the implications. "Good. I want everything above board. I want to know exactly where my money went and how much Miguel owes the government." "Your money. Every truck, every piece of equipment, every permit fee. I paid for all of it. If Miguel wants to be a Morales instead of a Rodriguez, he can build his own empire with Morales money." Marcus leaned back in his chair, and I could see him processing the totality of what I was asking him to do. "What's your timeline?" "I want the repossession orders filed today. Health Department and Tax Authority notifications by end of week. And Marcus, I want everything documented. Every step, every form, every deadline. I want this to be textbook perfect." "You're not playing games," he said, and it wasn't a question. "I'm 61 years old, Marcus. I don't have time for games. I have time for justice." The first truck was at the Riverwalk location when I arrived with the tow truck driver at 10 a.m. Miguel was inside, probably prepping for the lunch rush, unaware that his world was about to change as dramatically as mine had the night before. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of fresh tortillas from nearby restaurants. I could hear the familiar sounds of sizzling meat and chopping vegetables through the truck's service window. I knocked on the service window with the authority of a man who owned what he was knocking on. "Miguel, we need to talk." He looked annoyed to see me, like I was interrupting something important. His hair was messy, his apron already stained with grease. "Kind of busy here, Vinny. Can't this wait?" Behind him, I could see Rosa prepping vegetables, Danny cleaning the grill. Good people who were about to get caught in the crossfire of Miguel's choices. No, it can't. I held up the legal documents, crisp and official in the morning light. These trucks are registered in my name as collateral for the loans I made to the business. Those loans are now due in full. His face went pale, the color draining like oil from a cracked pan. What are you talking about? We have an agreement. We had a family agreement. But you made it clear last night that we're not family. I gestured to the tow truck idling behind me, its diesel engine rumbling like a mechanical heartbeat. You have 10 minutes to remove your personal items and shut down the equipment. You can't do this. I have customers, I have orders. His voice cracked like a teenager's, all the adult confidence from last night evaporating. You have customers using equipment you don't own, operating under permits you didn't pay for, in locations you're not authorized for. I pulled out a printed GPS report, the data as damning as a confession. This truck has been at unauthorized locations 67 times in the past month. That's 67 permit violations, Miguel. Each one a fine. Each one in my name. Sophia appeared at the window then, her face flushed with anger and something that looked like panic. She wasn't wearing makeup yet, and without it, she looked younger, more desperate. This is insane. You can't just steal his business. I'm not stealing anything, I said calmly, enjoying the way my voice carried over her hysteria. I'm repossessing my own property. Property I paid for, registered in my name, and maintained with my own hands. I looked directly at Miguel, making sure he understood every word. You wanted to make family decisions without me. Here's your first taste of independence. The tow truck driver was professional, efficient, moving with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this hundreds of times. Within 15 minutes, Miguel's taco truck number 1 was hooked up and ready to transport. Miguel stood on the sidewalk, still wearing his apron, watching 22 years of father-son partnership disappear down Commerce Street on the back of a flatbed. Eduardo will hear about this, Sophia said, her voice shaking with anger that couldn't hide her fear. Good. Tell him I said welcome back to San Antonio. Hope he brought his checkbook, because his son's about to need some real family support. Truck number 2 was at the medical center, serving the hospital lunch crowd that had become loyal customers over the past 2 years. Miguel had obviously called ahead because when I arrived, 3 of his employees were standing outside looking confused and worried. Rosa, the cook who'd been with us since the second truck, her face creased with concern. Danny, the young kid who worked weekends and dreamed of opening his own place someday. Maria, who handled the register and somehow remembered every regular customer's order and their children's names. Mr. Rodriguez? Rosa approached carefully, her voice carrying the respect she'd always shown me. Miguel said you're taking the trucks? That's right, Rosa. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this. And I was sorry. These people had done nothing wrong except trust the wrong person. But what about our jobs? I got kids to feed. Her voice carried the weight of real worry, the kind that comes from living paycheck to paycheck. I looked at the 3 of them, good people who'd never done anything wrong, who'd helped build this business into something we could all be proud of. They deserved better than being casualties in Miguel's war of ingratitude. How would you feel about working for a new boss? Same job, same routes, but better pay and a boss who actually values loyalty. Their faces lit up with cautious hope, like flowers turning toward unexpected sunlight. By Thursday, I had all 3 trucks in my possession and a full audit report from my accountant that read like an indictment. Miguel owed $31,247 in unreported income taxes. The health department had suspended his vendor permits. The city had fined him $8,500 for unauthorized location violations. Every single thing I'd suspected had been confirmed by professionals who dealt with this kind of situation every day. Carmen and I sat at our kitchen table that evening, the calculator between us like a weapon we were learning to use, planning our new business model with the precision of generals planning a campaign. Rosa knows all the customers personally, Carmen said, making notes in her careful handwriting. And she's got her food handler's certification current, unlike some people. Danny's good with the equipment maintenance. Kid has natural mechanical instincts and actually listens when I explain things. Carmen smiled grimly. What about Miguel's routes? I smiled for the first time since the engagement party, and it felt like stretching muscles I'd forgotten I had. We're going to serve his exact routes. Same locations, same times. Let the customers decide who makes better tacos and who treats employees better. Friday morning, my phone rang. Miguel's name appeared on the screen, and for a moment, I considered not answering. But I wanted to hear what he had to say now that reality had hit him like a sledgehammer. Vinny, please, we can work this out. I made a mistake. His voice sounded different now, younger, desperate, stripped of the arrogance from the engagement party. You made a choice? I corrected him, my voice steady as a metronome. You chose Eduardo Morales over Vincent Rodriguez. Now you get to live with Morales money instead of Rodriguez money. He doesn't have the kind of resources you do. The admission hung in the air like smoke from a fire that was burning his bridges. Funny how that works, isn't it? Blood relatives don't always come with blank checkbooks. I could hear him breathing on the other end, probably trying to figure out how to fix something that couldn't be fixed with words. Look, I'm sorry about what I said. I was nervous, and Sophia had been talking about what? About how your stepdaddy wasn't good enough anymore. About how you needed to upgrade to a real father. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Miguel, let me explain something to you, I continued, my voice carrying the weight of 22 years of fatherhood. When your real father disappeared the first time, I didn't step in because Carmen asked me to. I stepped in because you were 7 years old and you needed a dad. When you broke your arm falling off your bike, I sat in that hospital waiting room for 6 hours, praying to a God I wasn't sure existed. When you graduated high school, I cried like a baby because I was so proud. When you told me you wanted to start a food truck business, I sold my mother's house to make it happen. I know. No, you don't know. You know that Vincent Rodriguez was convenient when you needed something. You never understood that Vincent Rodriguez loved you like a son. There's a difference between using someone and loving someone, Miguel. You just taught me which one you were doing. I hung up before he could respond, because there was nothing left to say. Saturday morning, the first Rodriguez mobile kitchen truck hit the medical center route at exactly 11 a.m. Rosa had worked through the night preparing fresh salsas and marinating the carnitas, her pride in the work evident in every perfectly diced onion. The new signs were simple but professional. Rodriguez Mobile Kitchen Family Recipes since 2025. The line formed immediately, like customers had been waiting for us. Dr. Patterson, who'd been buying Miguel's tacos twice a week for 2 years, stepped up to the window with a smile. Rosa, good to see you. Where's Miguel? New management, doctor, Rosa said with the confidence of someone who knew she was valued. Same recipes, same quality. Maybe a little better. By noon, we'd sold out of everything. Rosa looked stunned, her face glowing with the satisfaction of work well done. Mr. Rodriguez, I never seen a lunch rush like that. People kept asking if we were related to the old Miguel's trucks, and when I told them you were the original owner, they got even more excited. Word travels fast in this business, Rosa. People know quality when they taste it, and they know when they're dealing with honest people. The second truck launched Monday at the downtown office complex route. By Wednesday, we had all 3 trucks operational, serving Miguel's former territory with his former employees and improved versions of his recipes. It was like we'd taken everything good about his operation and removed everything toxic. Thursday of the second week, Miguel showed up at my garage. I saw him through the window, standing by the chain-link fence like a lost dog, no longer the confident young entrepreneur who'd once planned to build a food empire. He was wearing a McDonald's uniform, the kind with the polyester that never looks quite clean and the name tag that screams, entry level. Behind him stood Eduardo Morales, looking significantly less prosperous than he had at the engagement party. His expensive watch was gone, replaced by something plastic. His clothes looked like they'd been slept in. We want to buy the trucks back, Eduardo said without preamble. Like this was a simple business transaction. They're not for sale, I said simply. Name your price. I looked at Miguel, who couldn't meet my eyes. His face was thinner, older somehow, like the weight of his choices had physically changed him. The same price Miguel valued our relationship at. Nothing. "Come on, Vinny," Miguel said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I learned my lesson. I know I messed up." "You didn't mess up, son. You chose." I let that word, son, hang in the air between us, a reminder of what he'd thrown away. "You stood in front of our entire family and chose Eduardo Morales over the man who raised you. You chose Sophia's ambition over 22 years of father-son love. You chose to throw away everything we built together because you were embarrassed by your stepdaddy." Eduardo stepped forward, his face reddening with anger or embarrassment. "Look, I can pay." "With what?" "The same money you used to support Miguel for the first 7 years of his life." "Oh wait, that's right. You weren't there." The words hit their mark, and Eduardo's confident facade cracked like cheap paint. "I'm here now." "You're here now because Miguel was successful. Where were you when he was learning to ride a bike? When he was scared of the dark? When he needed a father to teach him how to be a man?" Eduardo's face reddened, but he had no answer because we both knew the truth. "Miguel," I continued, "you want to know what the difference is between a real father and a stepfather? A real father doesn't abandon his child when things get tough. A stepfather chooses to love someone else's child as his own, every single day, for no reason except love. I chose you, Miguel. Every day for 22 years I chose you, and at the first opportunity, you threw that choice back in my face." 3 months later, Carmen and I were sitting in our expanded office. We'd rented the space next to my garage to handle the paperwork for our now 5-truck operation, when Rosa knocked on the door. The business had grown beyond our wildest expectations, with customers actively seeking out our trucks because word had spread about how we treated our employees. "Mr. Rodriguez? Miguel's here. He wants to talk to you." Through the window, I could see him standing by the chain-link fence again, but this time he was alone. No Eduardo, no Sophia, just a young man who looked like he'd learned some hard lessons about the difference between family and biology. "Send him in." Miguel entered slowly, his McDonald's hat in his hands like a penitent approaching an altar. "Hi, Vinny. Mrs. Rodriguez." Carmen nodded coldly. She'd been less forgiving than I had, if that was possible, treating Miguel's betrayal as a personal insult to our marriage and the family we'd built together. "I just wanted you to know. Eduardo left again last week. Soon as he realized how much I owed in taxes and fines, he said he had some business opportunities in Houston. Haven't heard from him since." I kept my expression neutral, though inside I felt the grim satisfaction of a man whose predictions had come true. "Sorry to hear that. Sophia and we broke up. She said she didn't sign up to be with someone who worked fast food. Apparently, a McDonald's uniform doesn't have the same appeal as owning 3 food trucks." Miguel looked around the office, taking in the photos of our trucks, the employee schedules, the certificates of appreciation from various customer locations. Pride was written all over the walls, the kind of pride that comes from building something honest and sustainable. "You've done good here. Rosa tells me you're treating the employees real well. Danny said you're teaching him about engine repair after hours, helping him understand the whole business." "Danny reminds me of someone I used to know," I said carefully. "Kid who wanted to learn everything, who wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty, who appreciated what people did for him." The comparison wasn't lost on Miguel, and I saw him flinch like I'd slapped him. "Vinny, Miguel." I stood up and walked around the desk, moving closer to this young man who'd once been my son. "Let me ask you something. Do you remember when you were 12 and you wanted to quit Little League because you struck out in front of Jennifer Martinez?" He nodded, his eyes beginning to fill with tears. "What did I tell you?" You said that a man finishes what he starts even when it's hard, even when people are watching, even when you're embarrassed." "And what did we do?" "We went to the batting cages every night for 2 weeks until I could hit a curveball. You stayed late after work, missing dinner, just to help me practice. And what happened the next game? I got 3 hits, including a double that drove in 2 runs. The memory hung between us like a bridge we'd once crossed together." I put my hand on his shoulder, The same shoulder I'd patted thousands of times during homework sessions and bedtime stories and proud moments over 22 years. It felt thinner now, less substantial, like Miguel himself had become smaller. Miguel, I want you to understand something. I will always love you. You were my son before you decided you weren't, and that doesn't change because you chose poorly. But love doesn't mean trust. Love doesn't mean partnership. And love doesn't mean I'm going to rescue you from the consequences of your choices. His eyes filled with tears that he didn't try to hide. I know I can't take back what I said, but I want you to know that you were a real father to me. You are my real father, Eduardo. He's just the guy who got my mom pregnant and then disappeared when being a father got inconvenient. I appreciate you saying that, Miguel. I really do. Is there any chance? Could I maybe work for you again? I know I'd have to start at the bottom, prove myself again. I'd do anything: cleaning, prep work, whatever you needed. Carmen and I exchanged a look. We'd discussed this possibility, knowing it would eventually come up. We'd even argued about it, with Carmen taking the harder line and me wavering between my protective instincts and my disappointment. Miguel, I have 5 trucks now and 22 employees. Every one of them depends on me to make good decisions that keep this business growing and stable. I can't risk their livelihoods for sentiment, no matter how much I might want to. I understand, he said, though I could see the hope dying in his eyes. But there's a McDonald's down on South Laredo that needs a night manager. It's honest work, and it might teach you something about running a business from the ground up instead of having everything handed to you. He nodded, understanding that this was as close to a second chance as he was going to get. Thank you for even telling me about it. After he left, Carmen came over and sat on the edge of my desk, her expression softer than it had been when Miguel was in the room. You think he learned anything? Maybe. Time will tell. Some lessons can only be learned the hard way, and maybe that's what he needed. You know, Rosa asked me if we'd consider hiring him back eventually. She thinks he's really changed. What did you tell her? I told her that family isn't about second chances. It's about never needing them in the first place. 6 months later, Rodriguez Mobile Kitchen was featured in the San Antonio Business Journal as one of the fastest-growing food service companies in the city. We'd opened our first brick-and-mortar restaurant on the east side, hired 37 employees, and were looking into franchising opportunities. The American dream, built on loyalty and hard work instead of entitlement and ingratitude. Carmen and I were having dinner at our restaurant. Rosa had insisted on preparing a special meal for us. When Danny approached our table, Mr. Rodriguez, I wanted to thank you again for the promotion. Assistant manager at 19. My mom's real proud. You earned it, son. You show up early, stay late, and you care about quality. That's all any boss can ask for. I was wondering, could I maybe take some business classes at SAC? I know you're always talking about how important it is to understand the whole operation, not just your piece of it. I smiled. I'll pay for the classes if you maintain AB average. His face lit up. Really? Really? But I have one condition. Anything. You keep that work ethic, you keep learning, you keep treating people right, and someday when you're ready to start your own business, you do it the right way. You build relationships based on respect, not just money. You understand that family is about loyalty, not just blood. Yes, sir, I understand. As Danny walked away, practically floating with excitement, Carmen reached across the table and took my hand. You know what I love about this? She said. What's that? We finally found our real family. 22 employees who show up every day, who work hard, who treat this business like it matters to them. Rosa sends you Christmas cards. Danny calls you Mr. Rodriguez like you're his grandfather. Maria brings you tamales every Friday. I looked around the restaurant at the families eating our food, at Rosa directing the kitchen with the confidence of someone who knew she was valued, at the young servers who greeted every customer like they were welcoming them into their home. You know what Miguel never understood? I said. Blood doesn't make you family. DNA doesn't make you family. Showing up makes you family. Being there when it matters makes you family. Choosing to love someone every day, even when they're not perfect, that's what makes you family. And loyalty, Carmen added. Real family doesn't abandon each other when something better comes along. Miguel's working at that McDonald's now. Rosa heard he got promoted to assistant manager, making $18.50 an hour. Think he's learned anything? I think he's learning that when you throw away something real for something that looks shinier, you usually end up with nothing. A year later, I got a letter in the mail. Simple white envelope, my name written in Miguel's careful handwriting. Dear Vinny, I know I don't have the right to call you Dad anymore, but I want you to know that I think about our family every day. I drive past the restaurant sometimes and see how busy it is. See the line of people waiting for Rosa's tacos, and I'm proud of what you built. I'm proud that I was part of it, even if I threw it away. I'm still at McDonald's, but I got promoted to general manager last month. It's not glamorous, but you taught me that honest work is never something to be ashamed of. I'm learning about business from the ground up, like you said. Maybe someday I'll be ready to start over, do things the right way. I know you don't owe me anything, but I want you to know that you were the best father a kid could ask for. You taught me how to work, how to treat people, how to build something meaningful. I forgot those lessons for a while, but I remember them now. Eduardo hasn't been back. I don't expect him to be. I understand now that being a father isn't about biology. It's about choice. It's about showing up. It's about loving someone even when they don't deserve it. You showed up for me every day for 22 years. I'm sorry it took losing you to understand what that meant. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a second chance. But I want you to know that Vincent Rodriguez will always be my real father, no matter what name is on my birth certificate. Thank you for everything. I love you, Miguel. I folded the letter and put it in my wallet, next to a picture of Miguel at his high school graduation, wearing the cap and gown I'd bought him, smiling with the pride of a young man who knew he was loved. Carmen found me sitting on our back porch that evening, watching the sunset paint the San Antonio skyline in shades of orange and pink. You okay, mi amor? I showed her the letter. She read it quietly, then sat down beside me. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that maybe the best revenge isn't destroying someone. Maybe the best revenge is building something so good, so strong, so full of real love that it shows them exactly what they threw away. You think he's really learned? I think pain is a hell of a teacher. And I think a year of working for minimum wage while watching his father figure build an empire with the people who stayed loyal, that's got to teach you something about the value of family. So what now? I thought about Danny, who'd just enrolled in his 3rd business class and was talking about maybe opening a Mexican-Asian fusion truck someday. I thought about Rosa, who'd been accepted into the culinary management program at the Art Institute. I thought about Maria, who'd started dating a nice accountant and had invited us to meet him next week. Now we keep building. We keep showing up for the people who show up for us. We keep proving that loyalty matters, that family is a choice, that hard work and respect are worth more than blood and biology. And Miguel? Miguel made his choice. If he wants to earn his way back into this family, he knows what he needs to do. But it won't be easy, and it won't be quick. And it sure as hell won't be because I feel sorry for him. Carmen leaned against my shoulder. Remember when you used to say that Miguel would learn the family business from the ground up? Yeah. Turns out you were right. He's just learning it at McDonald's instead of with us. I laughed, the first real laugh I'd had when thinking about Miguel in over a year. Maybe that's exactly what he needed. Maybe some lessons can only be learned the hard way. As the sun set over San Antonio, I thought about the boy who'd once stood in my garage, eager to learn everything I could teach him. And I thought about the man he was becoming, working night shifts and learning what it meant to earn respect instead of expecting it. Maybe that was the real victory. Not the business success, not the financial ruin I'd brought down on his head, not even the public humiliation of being abandoned by his real father again. Maybe the real victory was that Miguel was finally learning the lessons I tried to teach him 22 years ago. That family is earned, that respect is built one day at a time, and that a man's character is measured by how he treats the people who love him. The Rodriguez mobile kitchen empire would continue to grow. Our employees would continue to thrive. Carmen and I would continue to build the kind of family that shows up, stays loyal, and chooses love over convenience. And maybe, someday, if Miguel proved he'd really learned what it means to be family, there might be room at our table for one more Rodriguez. But he'd have to earn it, just like the rest of us did. If you liked this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions in the comments below. Let us know where you're listening from, and tell us about a time when you learned the hard way that family is about loyalty, not blood.